Everybody, it's Monday, June 10th at 8:33 a.m. We're here for our 5th session of negotiations.
Good morning.
It's not a Friday, so that's an improvement. We are now 30 days from when we started, so I meant to turn some time over to Jared here.
Okay.
Yes, it has been, as of yesterday, 30 days since our first session, which, as you know, kicks in the provision that we have to proceed with the fact-finding commission portion of the negotiation process. That's pursuant to Article 36, Paragraph 13, and Idaho Code 44-1806. So by the end of the day, Friday, each of us need to notify the other party of the individual selected for the fact-finding commission, and then we'll follow that process. Now, of course, we can continue negotiations, and that's the plan, but statutorily, we have no choice but to begin that process. So
I understand.
any questions or concerns on that?
No.
I figured as much, but I wanted to get that on the record, and we'll be getting you that name and contact information soon.
Likewise.
Okay, thank you.
How do you guys want to handle today?
Well, I think we're curious to see your calculations and make sure that we're on the same page there.
So I'm gonna hand it out. It's 3 sheets to
Okay.
revise our 20 and our 24. The 20, you'll just see the pay chart simplicity, and then you're gonna see what the error was and how I corrected it.
Okay.
Oh, and 24 is the same thing, just without the tables, because I don't want to build 4 tables till we kind of come to a conclusion on
Okay. Very good.
the table itself. And it sucks to make an error, like, it's annoying, but actually it was really nice for me, and I know that sounds very random, because I know you actually looked at it. Like, I know you sat down and did a deep dive, so it took this huge pressure off. Like, I know you understand the table, so I'm very comfortable for us to have discussions now, because I think both sides understand how it was built. Yep. So there should be 3 sheets. And those are our revised 20 with an additional sheet, and then our revised 24, which all it did was remove the schedules, which we will attach in the CBA once we come to a table decision. Now, the last meeting, you guys had asked for a summary of how the budget works, because as we talked about, the pool of money available is not what the city budget looks like. Last session wasn't overly productive. Do you guys want that budget presentation today?
I think that we do. I think we're gonna go talk about this real quick.
Okay.
So we'll have a brief caucus and talk about this so that we understand what's going on here. And then we'll come back and,
So let me explain how the error occurred. So if you pull up the 2-slide mini PowerPoint, shortest presentation I've ever given. We talked about having to build a scale that kind of looked like the old one as far as starting wages. So we originally had 112.5 to step 2 and 5% to step 1, roughly. It was, I don't know. There's like 17 versions of this spreadsheet. What we meant to bring was the 7.5 to step 1 and 2. But for the firefighter with paramedic, I didn't adjust that 112 back to the 107 because it's it's one of 4 cells that has to be manually calculated. And it was just one of those cells
okay,
because it has the weird calculation in it.
okay. You guys have any questions before we take a break for a minute?
No.
Okay,
All right.
we will be back.
Good morning, and we're back at 9:22 a.m.
Okay. So we have a counter proposal for you. However, we forgot to put something in there. Scott's gonna talk on it real quick.
Wait, still hand these out?
Yeah.
Thank you. You can have two.
So this is insurance. It's simplified from what we've talked about previously in these sessions quite a bit. And it just has a table in there that spells out directly what the city's responsibility would be each calendar year. And those do reflect an 8% increase each year, which we feel is a very fair number. Again, it'll be the number in the table or the actual premium, whichever is less. But then each year, that number would come into effect. One thing, since we did just make this adjustment on the table and print it out, we did not put in the last 3 months of 2024, which we had in previous proposals, so that does need to be included with the current rates that the city's covering right now.
So the city's current coverage, not the current rates.
Current coverage for 24, yes. So that would continue through December, and then in January, the 25 rates that are listed there would go into effect.
And I can initial that if you want, or.
We'll need
you can
time to
deal
look
with
at
that.
it,
Yeah, very good.
but I'll make a note.
Okay.
And with that, we'll continue administering everything that we need to administer. And it should make it quite a bit simpler to look through.
So, just so I run through, we did a medical, you guys did a counter, and then that counter revoked 3 and 4. This is a counter over the top of that, and your 3 and 4 remain in place?
Yes, your counter to our counter, I think, if I'm remembering right, didn't address the bundle that we had presented. And so I think as we talked about maybe 2 meetings ago, that was essentially denial of that counter. So
Okay,
we feel that
so
those
your
are
3
still
and
on-
4 remain on the table?
They are
with
still on
this.
the table.
Okay, I just want
And
to make
this is
sure I have
entirely separate.
everything.
Yep.
And if you would like a copy that has a column for the last 3 months of 24, we can certainly provide that too.
I don't need that at this time, but when we get down into the nuts and bolts, we'll have to talk about it.
So a couple other things. When you calculated the budget number that you showed us, were you using the hourly rates that were in that table, the original table?
Are you talking about the placement cost?
Yes.
So it would have been built off of the table with the error.
Okay.
Could you bring us another cost to
No.
show us any update?
Because I know you guys have counters, that's all manually done. So I would rather have the dialogue before I break down the numbers, because I have to keep doing it.
Sure.
And the more times, I mean, there's like 17 versions, because I do a new sheet every day. So if I've made any changes, I can find where the error was,
Okay.
ironically.
Okay.
I can do it once. I'd rather have the dialogue about what you don't like about the chart before I place everybody again.
Okay.
So yeah, those numbers are based off of the errored file.
Okay. That's understandable. So we understand that the concept and the idea behind the new pay scale is part of it is to increase potential earnings, right? For our members over time. However, with the change that we got today in it, we're not sure that all of our members currently fit on the scale.
One doesn't.
Yeah. So part of our intention today is to take a little bit of time and kind of iron that out and potentially bring you a change to that to hopefully solve that problem. That being said, we would like to have your budget proposal at some point.
Presentation.
Sorry.
I am not proposing a budget.
Presentation. That was a slip. Yeah, your budget presentation, we would like to see that. And if you have anything for us to discuss.
We got piles, guys.
Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I missed that on my
That's
notes
okay.
because it wasn't numbered. The job descriptions for the day staff, were you able to,
We're cleaning those up now,
okay,
and we have a response to your counter on their pay, but it'll be ready maybe this afternoon or tomorrow.
okay, very good.
Is it just gonna be formatting on those, or are job descriptions
The
being
majority
changed?
will just be formatting, so they can be included in the CBA. To actually overhaul them takes a lot longer than a week.
Okay. We're finding that out.
Yeah, it's not an easy process.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right, are you
that's-
ready to
that's-
dive
that's
into
all
the
I have.
wonderful
Yeah.
world of municipal budgeting?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is a very high-level overview of how our budget functions and how it's funded. So the most important thing to understand when you're looking at the city budget is not all dollars are the same. So some of those are taxes, and even how we pull tax money varies. Then we have dollars that are fees. These are our enterprise funds. For example, ambulance is an enterprise fund because we get the money from the county, even though we charge for some of that service, but it's not a full recovery. We do have grants and ARPA dollars. Now, those are very restrictive in what we can use them for. They also have very delineated timeframes. Some dollars are one-time money. We just bought a ladder truck. I know Jordan's kind of excited about that. That's one-time money we put in the budget. Sometimes we pull that money in 1 year, and sometimes we budget it over like 3 years. Traditionally, we've called those capital improvement. When you see Gene's budget presentations, we're shifting to CapEx. So if you're comparing years, that's why we use two different terms. So personnel costs are the ones we're all familiar with. Those are budgeted for every year. When we do multi-year contracts, which we've tried to go to for everyone's mental health, we then have, the budgeting process is actually shorter because we know what those numbers are gonna be. So, too many. The city budget sounds like monopoly money. It's $167 million. However, 39% of that is tax funds, which is 64 million. But not all of the tax funds are for the general fund. Like I said, just under 39% are tax funds. 25% of the overall budget is the general fund. The general fund is the single biggest fund we have in the city. So the general fund is actually 67% of the taxes. So it took us from 167 million down to 42 million. So that's the piece of the pie we're looking at. You have a perplexed. You okay?
Yep, just trying
Okay.
to connect the math.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I'll show you how I got there. So tax funds is 39%.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
And then the general fund is a piece of that. The whole budget compared to the general fund, it's 25%. But when you just look at the tax funds, the general fund is 67% of that piece. As you can see, some of these barely make it on the chart. Now, struggling. Where we get our tax funds, 55% is property taxes. And when we talk about taxes, that's what everybody thinks of because that's what's hitting an individual's life. However, 18% of that is state and liquor tax. That is controlled at the state level, both the distribution and the amounts. Grants, fees, and internal transfers, that is 15% of the 24 budget. We apparently had a very good year in 24 and interest sat at 8%. Building fees are at 2%, and that is cyclical depending on what the economy is doing. And then franchise fees is also 2%. That franchise fee number goes down every year. The biggest driver of that is cable franchise, and most people have cut the cord to cable. So that is why that number constantly decreases. Now, when you break down the general fund, these are all of the departments that are housed within it, and this is their portion of the budget. So 66% roughly of the 24 budget is already spent on emergency services. That's police and fire. Notice I'm not talking about ambulance because we're only talking about general fund dollars right now. Roughly 10% of the general fund covers city administration. So this year's budget, 43.63% is police and 22.99 is fire. But we're talking overall budget. This is a comparison of the overall budget in the orange and the personnel budget in the blue. So as you can see, most departments' major cost is personnel. I'm going to give you percentages because that's a lot of little numbers. So the majority of our departments spend over 70% of their entire budget on personnel. Fire actually has the highest percentage at 95.6. It's followed by Parks Admin and then HR.
85.6.
Sorry, 85. You'll notice there's a couple outliers here. Animal Services, Parks, and City Hall and Housekeeping. City Hall and Animal Services spend a lot of money on cleaning agents, so those are expensive. I'll show you the ambulance budget. It also has a slightly bigger operational budget than the fire department because of the cost of medical supplies. So when you look at the general fund, like I explained last time, there's only two apples in the cart. You either reduce services or you tax more. If you move money from one area to another, you're decreasing services in one area. This is a breakdown of the fire budget versus the ambulance budget. So when you talk about the fire department overall, you're at just over 14 million. Personnel costs in fire are 85.6 and ambulance is 78. Again, that difference in operating is the cost of the supplies it takes to run in the ambulance area. All of this information is public, and that's where I found it, but I did print you off some of the source documents. That's,
We have to get some bigger binders.
I don't recommend the 4-inch, they're very cumbersome. So the city budget is a huge number, the 167 million, but when you break it down, the general fund is a much smaller piece of that. It's only 25% of the city's budget, and it houses a multitude of departments. There's limits on how much we can levy, all of these things, payments to the levy. It's a very much a moving target. When we publish our budget, we don't actually know what our income is because we don't have our numbers from the county. So we kind of like budget in the dark, standing in the mud, and we just hope that it's the right number at the end. So that's the quick and dirty on how budgeting works. So I promise you, there's not a big pool of money we're just not giving out.
Heather, I just have a question, kind of about how the city works with the county. On this new scale, are you guys planning on the paramedic stipends to be provided by the county?
Yes.
Reimbursed by the county?
Yes.
Okay. The city's not taking on any of the.
We are not
medic
taking on
stipends.
any of the medic costs. And the difference between firefighter and paramedic in the ranks, that isn't the percentage the county's paying. There's a backwards number you don't see on what'll be billed to the county.
Right.
We will not decrease our ask from the county to cover ambulance. It will remain the same or go up.
Okay.
Otherwise, those stipends are gonna have to be really big to take the place of, I think we have 19 paramedics. That's full-time versus the stipends, so the percentage on the back end looks different.
Okay. You guys have any questions? Any other questions?
Yeah, I do actually have another question. That first, going back to that cost, the initial cost you gave us for moving to the scale.
Placement
The
cost.
placement. Do you have that? I'm not gonna ask for another one, but when we do get another cost, are you able to split what the cost to the city is versus the cost to the county based on their reimbursement for the paramedic stipend, or is that? Or do you have a general percentage when we get to?
So, ish.
Yeah.
I can get it close, but I can't get it perfect.
Right.
Because I'm wiggling the ambulance contract to meet our needs, because the contract is 8 years out of date.
Right.
So I'm just kind of, that's what they're gonna have to pay. That's literally how I'm rolling right now.
Right. Okay.
I don't have a better, I can try, but
Yeah.
it's not gonna be close to
But when you
accurate.
presented that original 163, part of that is what the county will be reimbursing, or is that just going to be what the city
That's
is?
the full placement cost,
Okay.
regardless of where it's being charged to.
Okay.
To break it down further than that wouldn't be an accurate number.
Right,
I
okay.
couldn't even get you within a 5% average there,
Okay. Sure. Cool.
because it kind of changes how we work with the county.
Right.
and we're kind of crossing that bridge when we get there.
One more point of clarification, as far as the job descriptions go, we've been spending a lot of time on those. How would you like that to look?
Red line.
Okay. So you would like us to bring them back to you and say, this is,
Yeah, so the biggest thing is so firefighting field staff, so on the line staff, that's anyone who has to be a firefighter on the Rule of 80. They have to have the same job physical requirements.
Sure.
Because they all had to be able to do those same tasks. Obviously, there will be expanded things based on function, but those core firefighter things have to match through everything. The biggest problem with our job descriptions, besides the fact that they were written when I was basically in high school, is they don't have physical requirements. So it makes it very hard for us to help employees who are looking to join the city or promoting understand the exact requirements of the positions. Those are the biggest drivers. It also has a lot of antiquated language. There's sections we would prefer but are not necessary. So we're interested to see what you guys bring back.
so as far as the stuff that's duplicated in the contract, like the physical requirements,
Physical requirements aren't covered in the contract. It doesn't say you must be able to lift 50 pounds.
oh yeah, but as far as being able to pass the
Well, so
fit for
that's-
duty standard,
So that's standard in a job description, the requirements of the position. So when we post it for promotions, it's included in the posting.
sure. But as far as the stuff that could potentially be duplicated in the contract, do you want that also in the job description? Or is it okay being listed in the
Flag it so
We just
I
don't
can-
know that we want it in two different places.
Flag it so you can show me what you're talking about so
Okay.
I can answer appropriately.
Okay,
But yeah, just bring me back a red line in Word.
okay.
Track those
Yeah,
changes.
go ahead.
I think our intent is to probably give you, for example, firefighter description to see what,
Yeah,
what you like and
That's
what you
great.
don't like in it, and then we can transfer that to the other ones.
yeah.
Instead of
That's
giving
a
them all
good,
back.
that's
yeah.
how we started too.
Okay.
Okay. So we're close. I think we're fairly close on one of them.
Job descriptions are tough because you got a lot of opinions going into a document that touches a lot of people.
Okay.
You notice our negotiating team is too. We reduced because council doesn't have the same knowledge and understanding that your body does, so it's very difficult to get through them. That's why we've never really touched them, is no one wants to do them. But why not? Let's try it this year. We don't have anything else going on.
Okay, so I think with that, we would like to take some time to go over some of our other stuff that we're gonna bring to you, and try to get that ironed out in the next couple hours or so.
Okay,
Like one after
Want
lunch,
to do
yeah.
like 1 o'clock?
sure.
Be
We
back
can
at 1
reconvene at
o'clock.
1.
That should give us enough time to get some stuff done.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
The budget.
And we're back. It's 1:01 PM on the 10th.
Okay, so we have come with a counter proposal.
Thank you.
So our intent with bringing this counter proposal is to get a foundation on the pay scale so that we can appropriately respond to the other issues that are kind of tied to this scale.
Okay.
So in our proposal, counter proposal, we have added 1% to step increases across all of the scales. We feel like this accounts for the discrepancy that we had in the original plan that we had been working on. And this will allow for that movement in the scales to be more equitable for the one that was miscalculated. Or what else we had?
Yeah, no, we had also talked about this, it addresses, we understand the cost that the city incurs by moving us all to the step system. So this plan, we think, addresses that cost by, the first year, what was it, 164, 220, whatever the cost was.
The numbers are rolling.
This
so-
plan takes that into account and keeps that cost down because we do understand the burden of the cost to move on to the system. But it also allows employees to reach their potential salaries that were addressed in the original one, but after the correction, they didn't quite reach that. So this proposal addresses that.
So the problem is we revoked that proposal, so it's hard to go back and reference it. So I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand when you say you're addressing that, I'm not sure what piece I'm supposed to be comparing.
Well, I mean, those numbers we looked at for 2-3 weeks
Yeah.
before we got.
Yeah, so we did a lot of work
corrected,
on those.
and we felt like those numbers were something we could accept. And now that those numbers have changed, this would be our counter to those numbers changing.
So that only changed steps 2 through 12 on the firefighter with paramedic. It didn't change anything else on the table. So why is everything else on the table going up?
This is still an overall counter to the pay proposal.
I know, but I'm just addressing what was just verbally said, so I'm trying to understand.
That is one aspect of what this is addressing, but it also is addressing just the overall pay over time, but the long-term view of this pay scale, while at the same time, not really impacting the cost to move to the scale. So it's kind of a compromise in the short term for the city side to not increase pay, but it does help out with, in the long term, with the earning potential for the employees. And so that's one aspect of it on the firefighter paramedic, but overall it's still a counter. And counter, we shouldn't call it a counter because it's addressing components of Proposal 20.
Well, it's a counter.
Well, it's addressing components of Proposal 20, but not all aspects of Proposal 20,
So I need to consider Proposal 20 as a whole. So there has to
Well,
be a bigger
we have to
conversation.
get a base to agree upon before we can talk about the whole proposal.
But I can't look at the whole, I can't agree on this until we've talked about the proposal in its entirety. Because that's why it was listed as a grouped proposal.
And so I guess we can consider this just a step towards that
And
conversation.
I can't TA anything until that whole proposal is addressed.
And I understand that, but we still can work on agreeing on what our basis for the rest of that proposal. Like,
I'm
it's
going
a
to
lot
agree to disagree, but we can have the conversation. I do have a big concern over, so I'm assuming, how did you come up, what is a code enforcement captain? Because it's not listed on your written proposal, but is on the scale.
Oh, we forgot to change.
That was just a title.
Yeah, that was just a
placeholder.
title placeholder is all that
So
was.
that's a day position that does not work on the ambulance. Why would I pay it a stipend?
Because that position still can respond to regular emergency response. They still can take shift time. They can work overtime on night shifts or weekends if needed, and they still are fit for duty. So,
But there's fit for duty to be a firefighter, not to be a paramedic.
but they still can work on the line and are sometimes required to work on the line.
Yes, and that would be in a firefighter capacity. How often are they going out as a paramedic function?
Currently, that person is not a paramedic, nor have they been.
But they do occasionally will respond on reserve ambulance calls when
Yeah.
all of our ambulances
We
are.
have had them respond on an ambulance.
But in
But
the
if they're
spirit,
not paramedics, how are they responding on an ambulance call? Wouldn't they be responding as an EMT?
They will, yeah. But if
That's
they, in the
different
event
than
that they
paramedic.
were a
Well, if they
paramedic,
were
there's both spots, though.
paramedic.
and in the spirit of this pay scale and I think what we are all working towards here, it's a matter of them having the license and the ability to use those skills when needed, not how often they're doing it.
So they're gonna be paid as a paramedic even if they're never responding because they're not on the same shift.
the potential would be there for them to respond as a paramedic.
And how did you come up with this wage
With paramedic,
for the code enforcement captain overall?
it's the same as what was called the day captain.
The current day captain that's on the
Correct.
scale?
Yes.
And we have that limited as a limited service position. So it is not something that we would consider continuing beyond the current incumbent, based on the structure that we proposed. If we're gonna continue that position, then we would be revisiting, the city would be revisiting how we scale that.
And so that would be a conversation that we have with you as to adjusting the scale for that, to retain the day captain.
Yeah, so that conceptually is different than what we proposed, so we would have to revisit the package.
Okay.
So this removes the fire marshal from the scale.
I see this.
And in some of our previous conversations here, it was made fairly clear that the fire marshal was not a position that was necessarily a make or break.
It was definitely
component of
something that we were definitely wanting to converse on. However, the day captain was still listed as a limited service position because of how it is currently structured. Again, we're back to how is it equitable to pay someone the same annual amount if they're working basically 1,000 hours less? And I still,
We can address that.
I didn't really get much of an answer on that last
So I
time.
think we've made some notes as to that. So this position is reflective to the pay at or above a captain level of their responsibilities, but it's not necessarily limited to. They supervise and lead the fire investigation team. They keep their fire investigator certifications. They make sure everyone on their team, on that fire investigation team, has their certifications. They support fire investigation education for the team.
You mean the one other person?
No,
No, fire
the team,
investigation, not
the
code
fire
enforcement. There's
investigators.
12 of us.
Yeah, there's 12 fire investigators that are line personnel.
Okay.
So they're responsible for that team. They do code enforcement. So the person that's in that position needs to learn a high-level skill. There's a lot that goes into code enforcement. There's a lot to know that's different from just a general captain's position. I just pushed the wrong button. So we feel like this is a very high value to the city to have that person very knowledgeable in code enforcement. I know that I've called that person many times when I need questions answered. They do plan review. So they go to contractors, or the contractors come to them, they review the contractor's plan, make sure everything is copacetic with the fire code. Sorry, thanks, Scott. So in order to do that, they need to have that high level of skill and understanding to be able to look through those plans. Public safety, they are paramount to public safety in certifying building systems, using that skill and that knowledge, and then keeping up also with their firefighter, EMT, medic skills, whatever they have for certifications there. So they're removed from the line, but they still need to make sure they're maintaining all those certifications along with all of these other high-level education things that they have to look at. As well as being a supervisor over those fire prevention positions that we currently have. Right.
We use a lot of words interchangeably, so I have to make sure I know which part I'm working on. So I can tell you, you gotta pick a different title. Because
Okay.
code enforcement is housed in the police department, and if I suddenly have a code enforcement captain, people are gonna be confused.
And,
So,
yeah, that,
find me a title that isn't that.
sure, we can certainly.
It's just,
whole
why we dialogue, pick something else.
Absolutely,
Because it's gonna be really hard to have code enforcement in 3 divisions.
sure.
So, I need a different title.
Okay.
We're gonna need time to ponder on this one. Because as you know, the math takes time.
Okay. Would you like to reconvene
Nope, we'd like to keep puttering.
today? Okay. So we do have a firefighter job description that we need a little bit of time to kind of finalize and then bring out.
Okay,
So that is what we would like to work on.
okay. I'd like to go through some proposals. We need some time on a counter we're working on that I don't have ready quite yet. Are you okay if we walk through what we have on the table right now?
Sure.
Okay. So we show City Original 2, which is application of the controlling documents, removing references to the handbook and which clearly define what sections apply, because as we all know, it doesn't. Where we have not really discussed that one, where does the union sit on that?
Currently, we've been spending a lot of time on what we have brought forth to you. And that's all we have at this time.
So you haven't gone through any of the open proposals?
We have gone through them, but we have been working on what is important to our membership.
Okay, we both have bilingual counters on the table. Have you looked at our last bilingual? We were very close there.
We have, yeah. That's something that we could revisit and bring back.
I guess we're in caucus then.
Okay.
It's 3:12 and we are back.
We are.
Do you want to lead with your revised job description for me?
Actually, we will lead with something else real quick. So we will go ahead and TA on the bilingual.
Okay. What number was bilingual?
9.
9, thank
Or
you.
wait, oh, is that
No.
wrong?
No.
Oh, sorry.
9, I'll find
It
it.
was 8.
8, you were close. So this is for city counter 3, where the change was in section B, number 1. In blue, it says at the discretion of the fire chief. Okay.
Yeah.
TA10. Ooh, we hit double digits, guys.
Okay, yeah, you saw that, okay. Okay. So I believe that's 9 that we have TA'd.
10.
10 that we've TA'd. Do you have any responses on our original proposals or counters?
I do. But I just printed things 47 times, so they were in the correct numeric order.
Okay,
And I don't want to go print them again. So because we were rolling well and I thought we were having a good conversation on pay, are you okay if I bounce back to pay before I address medical?
yep,
Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to have to handwrite them and it's going to make me twitch.
okay,
So I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to walk you through what we did and then I'll hand it out.
okay.
Because I made a lot of changes. What is 2610? See, that's how long my things are named. All right. So I like that we're dialoguing. I think it gets us a lot further in understanding where we're going rather than just trading paper. Yeah, I know. So let me make it readable. Okay. So I went back to our original 20A, that's kind of the summary of the PowerPoint, and I'm going to walk you through the changes that we made, just so we're all together. So this is, the new stuff is in yellow, and again, the struck stuff is red, but I want to hit the key elements that we're addressing. Like, obviously, I attached the new step and grade table. It's attached to it rather than having to reference another document. So the first thing we really addressed was the paramedic lieutenant rank. And listening to our conversation earlier and with some of the explanation as to why you adjusted percentages, we have one employee who is at max. Max paramedic, max longevity, won't receive an increase on the current scale unless the scale adjusts. So on the new scale, by you guys finding that error and us correcting it, which we appreciate, that did put them again at a max situation. So we have a way of approaching that. Currently, we have 3 FTE slotted for this position. 2 positions for this would go through a competitive promotional process with that person who is maxed, and our longest tenured paramedic would be placed as a lieutenant. For 25, if we didn't do that, they would maintain their current rate of pay that they make now, so they would not receive a decrease. Also, in looking it up, that person would be next to re-promote to a driver operator, currently newly called an engineer, because they held that position for one day, October 14th of 2002. Considering that's before most of our other paramedics started, I'm going to go ahead and assume that they are the next person eligible. So that's 2 of the pieces we need to address there just for that individual. The city's preference is to slot this person in as a permanent paramedic lieutenant, and then the other 2 would be competitive. So I just want to address that one situation that we're in. I gotta make it smaller. We struck the fire marshal language and the lateral. I also struck the things we've already talked about. What we did is we slotted the day cap, a new position. It's the fire prevention captain, which went into the same rank as the marshal, but it's paid differently. So the position would not be, it would receive the same annual pay as a fire captain. So I took the annual and I divided it backwards into 2080, so they make like $10 an hour more roughly than their counterpart as a captain. However, we would not pay it with a paramedic stipend unless they were actually working on it in a line capacity. So it would function like the ARF positions. If they were assigned in that line capacity, they would log in under that separate pay grade to have those earnings while functioning in the position. We wouldn't pay for the stipend like we are on the others. So there's a couple of reasons there. First is we have fiscal responsibility to Bannock County. We can't make it look like we're expanding positions to give employees more pay with no benefit to the county for their dollars. So that's why we said we would pay them while they are working the role.
So they would receive the 2% stipend
I think
if they were working,
we
or
left-
sorry, 4%,
Yeah.
yes.
They
Okay,
would move up, same thing, you move up the grade like we do for the ARF.
okay,
Horrible acronym, for the ARF. So they would go from a step 2 to a step 2 in the grade while working the line. So there is a difference. It'd be functioning more like the ARF than just the stipends. We did build in language on how promotion would work. We've talked about that numerous times. We didn't have it written down anywhere. So someone who's promoted to a new position would receive 5% added to their currently hourly rate, and then they would be placed at the new scale. We don't give steps at the end of the scale, the end of probation. We would do that at fiscal year like we've talked about for the rest of the staff. Demotion isn't something we've talked about, and it doesn't happen very often, but we do need boundaries on it. So the city currently has a practice, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, they are demoted to the new grade at a step 3. They shouldn't maintain their pay. If they're being demoted, they should make less. Then I pulled City Proposal 24 into this so that we can talk about it cohesively. Obviously, we are going to include the tables like we do in Schedule A now. Again, I haven't calculated those until we've kind of tentatively started with our 25. We did add 0.25% to steps 8 through 12 for fiscal year 27, and then again, those numbers would carry over to 28. So once it increases in 27 going forward, those steps have increased by 0.25%. Here's where the steps currently are at. So anything right of the red line would go up by the 0.25. So it'd be 2.25 and 1.7, 1.8. Can I do math? Yes. 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, now I'm screwing up.
And that's for all
All ranks,
ranks.
but just for those steps. Okay, so far? I'm gonna go through this fast and then I'm gonna give it to you to read, because I know you're gonna have a lot of conversation.
Okay.
Shrink my thing. And then here is the scale with the fire prevention captain and the note that it says it's only for working in the line capacity. But it's showing the same green as the paramedic stipend. So I'm going to hand that out so you don't have to try to memorize that, as I just shotgun through it.
Can you email that as well?
I can. A lot of it's pictures, so you're going to reformat it and it's not going to work, just so you know.
Oh,
Like, they're not
that's
charts,
That's
they're
fine, as long as
pictures.
we have a hard copy and something that we can fumble through electronically.
Thank you.
So that was city counter 4.
I have a hypothetical on the fire prevention captain.
You can have a hypothetical and I'll do my best.
So as far as movement into the position, if a current captain with medic moves into the position, will that movement into the step be based on their current pay as a captain with medic?
It would be based on them as a captain. Their medic wouldn't carry over because that's a stipend for that function.
Okay.
They would only get that paramedic stipend at that function if they're working the line, so it wouldn't transfer over.
Okay.
Because again, that's a separate billing function for us in the budget. So I looked at your scale, just so I understood it, and I briefly recreated it, so I'm gonna be cents off, just because of rounding based on the 2 different spreadsheets. Where is it? 25. This was it. So I looked at the percentage adjustments you applied to the steps, and the problem is that's a compounding percentage. So it takes your scale as wide as the city scale or considerably wider, which kind of goes outside what I told you I was doing. Sorry, it's gonna take a minute. This is just a comparison. You know, you're the same number since when I started this morning, but I have to count you every time. So this just shows a comparison with the annual salaries in there. But I have it broken down to a little bit easier scale for us to read here. Is that it? That's not it. I'm gonna have to refresh it. While you're looking at that, I'm gonna go refresh something on my computer, so I should. As I walked out of here on camera, I was walking into HR because of the delay. It was well timed.
Wow. It's simple things, right?
It is. Little things that make you happy. So I broke it down back into this min and max thing we've talked about before. Your proposal pushes our costs very, very high. It is not something the city can afford to adopt. If you look at column H, that's your cost of your proposal over the city's cost in E over the current scale. It increases by at least 10% for every rank. But I have this so you can read it.
Over the contract or the
The
steps?
current contract.
Just the
Yeah, I went.
for your proposed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just not something that we can absorb in the general fund or I believe in the ambulance fund. I'm not as familiar with the ambulance levy, but the ability to tax at the 3% is our issue because not all of the ambulance fund is tax. Some of it's through fee recovery. So I'm sorry, that is just, the city cannot look at that compounding 1% at every rank. We did look at it though. The column I, which is the far right in white, yours are black and white, so the far right, that's your cost of your proposal over our proposal.
So I'm seeing an error that we probably made in our proposal for the days captain. That I just want to make sure that's not being reflected in this.
So this is off of so the days captain, I think it took it off of your max at the paramedic.
It's the days captain hourly, I think is probably right. I can't say for sure, but it's being calculated on a
Is it the
2912, so it's significantly larger.
So even if I pop that out,
I-
it still pushes everything
Okay,
at least
okay.
10,000 higher over the city's proposal, which
Okay.
was already 10,000 higher. I'm sorry, guys, we just don't have the money in the fund to do it. And I'm not gonna have it next year or in 26, 27, or 28. Not unless we have some phenomenal growth. But I can make the correction for the annual. I can just hide that column. No, I like to fix it when we find it.
Was there an error in the fire prevention captain there for hours worked with the line capacity as well? Looks like
So I didn't know how to calculate that. Should I have calculated that at the 2912? Because I don't know how often the person goes out. So I calculated it at the full rate, not the 2080. Because we don't have someone who's currently doing it, so I didn't know how to cost it. I know it's rare. I think we've sent it out maybe 1 or 2 times in the last bit, but I didn't even know how to calculate it because we have no reference point. So I calculated it at the max expense, but it probably affected the captain, that fire prevention captain self. And again, I don't know what you want to call it. That's just what I called it.
Do you have a cost comparison of kind of what I was talking before, what it was going to cost the city with the, I don't want to call it an error, but with the 22.9 for the paramedic stipend and now what it is with the 17, a total cost for the city for both of them? Or
So-
do you know what the difference was?
I don't, because I've overwritten. I've tried to keep track. Since we pulled it back when you guys found the error and we submitted a revised, I'm not considering it as a cost basis. So a lot of numbers coming at you. I know you're gonna need to caucus and talk. Do you have any specific questions on pay for me right now?
Do you have the office or the day staff?
We're
Counter-
we're still reviewing, listening to some of our justification, when our discussion last time and rewatching it. I understand what you're saying, but for example, the civilian fire inspector position has no licensure requirements, whereas the building inspectors for the city are journeyman level with licensure requirements. So those are not apple to apple. That's why they're graded at a lower pay grade. Just, that's what we're breaking down for you, but we're gonna hand you information on each position so you can see how we made the analysis. This stuff's not open.
Oh, okay. So we have a firefighter job description.
Okay,
Based on the conversation we had earlier, you didn't want to necessarily partition 20A, proposal 20A. So we just want to know how you want to proceed forward with the job
I'd love to
descriptions
see
if we
what you
don't,
have, so
if
we
we don't
can
want to
just
partition.
start dialoguing.
Okay, so you want to have, so we want to just have a back and forth
Yeah.
dialogue, not necessarily us give you.
I would rather us build it together than just sit and trade papers over the course of a day.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Happy with that.
I mean, I'm happy to look at it as a draft, so I can tell you what we feel like we're missing, or you can
Yeah.
explain to me why we don't need it.
And I think that's our intent with getting you one, is so that you can look through it and it's a little less of the elephant to eat, I guess. So I think our big question was, how do you want to eat the elephant, right?
So
I mean,
let me read through it and then I'll ask some questions.
okay. You guys want to go, hey, will you go grab his jump drive out of the room? The red one.
So I can stop figuring out, can I call it an engineer at this point? So I can stop trying to write it 3 different ways?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Because I'm noticing you had to make the same edits I did.
Yeah, right? You good?
Yeah, that's fine.
You have it on your computer, right?
No, it's on my.
Oh, it's on there. I think we know.
You have it all right here.
I have our change. I don't have your notes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do.
So just starting off, can we call it a firefighter, not a fire EMT, because that's part of it?
I think so.
So, yeah.
Okay. And it needs to be, I need it to be the firefighter with the paramedic because it's the same rank, it's just a different pay grade.
And we had that changed on our original one and we changed it back.
Okay, I
and
just wanna
noticed
go
it
through to
didn't-
make sure
Yeah, I
that
don't
I'm
know if it got
understanding.
put on there the way that I wanted it to be, but should have been.
Don't use the email.
Just to us. Yeah, cool. We'll put it on the drive later.
So my concern is you've struck a lot of the firefighter with paramedic language and it leaves it pretty vague. I was looking for a little bit more detail in there to explain why there's the pay difference. Does that make sense? Like some of the equipment that we've taken off of lines 30 through 32, could we move that up?
I think the designation of advanced life support versus basic life support in itself justifies the pay difference.
And the licensure.
So here's my thing. You guys are writing it for active employees, right? I'm writing it for people coming into the department who want to know the difference. And
I
they
think somebody
don't,
coming into the department knows what a paramedic is versus EMT.
well, not if they're not a paramedic. They might not have a full understanding of the difference. So I'm trying to be illustrative. So when we're attracting people to apply, it's a very clear understanding of why that stipend is different. Because you have people coming in from outside our service or our licensures, like I know Alaska is not a transfer in. I'm explaining why sometimes we have more detail in there. It's to help attract and retain people. The retaining part, once you guys have them, we're good. But getting them here, we want to make sure we're being very illustrative in what the job looks like.
I think we sort of intentionally divided that out because since this is a contract between incumbents and the city or the union and the city, wanted to make sure that that made it in the contract as written, not necessarily with the impetus to attract new hires. So,
But this is what I have to post. I can't post something different than is the job description. So when I put it out there right now, it's kind of clunky and broke down looking. So that's kind of why we cleaned it up.
So when you say that you have to,
I
is that,
can't- I
is
have
that
to-
a policy?
I have to post the job description we are hiring for.
Okay.
So I understand that for incumbents and for actual union members, it makes sense. But getting someone into your union means I have to hire them, which means I have to list a job description that is descriptive enough for someone looking at entering the service to understand.
And your intent is to have them have all of the ranks.
Well, I would post firefighter
Okay.
because the others will be internal process.
Okay. So the other ones we could leave some of these
Some of
things
the
out
language we want to mimic, like the stipend, but other language, as long as it's not the physical requirements, can flex because you already have a working knowledge of it. But again, this is the document we use to attract people. When they sign a when they submit their application, it says they understand this. And if I'm suddenly changing it or making it bigger or less, then I have to be able to explain why. And I really don't want the 10 of us to have to sit down and try to do that at some point.
Okay.
And I would like to keep the physical evaluations and medical tests in there. Because again, when someone applies, they're not applying to the contract, they're applying to the job description.
What line is that?
118.
Page 4, 19, 20, 21. Sorry, when you red line, it pushes all your page numbers, your line numbers off. And then on that same page 4, your third bullet point, line 16, can you explain that addition of language?
Sorry, which one?
Page 4, third bullet point, line 16.
What line number?
16.
Oh, 16.
Must maintain a current and valid driver's license. And you guys added while on duty.
I think that's what it currently says. In the job description, current job description.
So I'm just making sure, because again, old and clunky. We didn't redline it. So, and then the bullet point right above it, we'd say by the completion of introductory period, because year 1 is defined by your introductory period.
Sorry,
I'm just brainstorming through
which one were you referring
the
to?
bullet
though?
point
What
right
above
above
it?
it.
I
The one that's struck through?
I think down low, it has that exact.
It's duplicative? Okay.
Somewhere,
there was a
somewhere
lot of
on there
stuff that was
has
in there, like
exactly
2 or
what
3
is
times.
Yeah.
the expectations and time. Oh, right above it on end of page 3, it has lines 108 through 113 have kind of what the requirements and time
A
frames.
lot of the changes that we made, we felt like they were already duplicated in there, so we tried to kind of condense it
So
a
there's
little
sometimes
bit.
there's some duplication between description and actual requirements, just so you
Yeah,
know.
we tried to make them reflect one another if we eliminated something that we felt like was duplicated.
I think we're jiving in the same direction.
Okay,
That's why we sent you drafts.
okay,
So I think you're good to keep plodding along,
okay,
but try to mimic the physical requirements and try to mimic the stipend. Now, but again, this has to be what I put out for people to apply. So
So-
it's gonna be more descriptive than you want and not as descriptive as I need.
when you say physical requirements,
Yep.
that would be starting in 122
Yep.
and continuing down to
Well, it'd be, yeah,
46.
yep, those have to match because they're all line positions.
Okay,
But I think we're on the same page.
okay,
And then just so I'm clear, to make it easier, to help with job posting, the extra details on equipment and specific techniques and things like that are helpful for
The firefighter.
However, for all of the rest of our positions,
It can be the summarized.
we don't need all these.
You can use more
extra lists of
jargon
things.
than you can use in the firefighter.
So everyone internal should know what they are.
That's right. Once they're in there, they speak. It's like trying to learn acronyms.
Okay.
okay.
I'm gonna put this down as like just as a draft for discussion and not as a proposal. Are you okay with that? Okay.
So going forward with that, going forward with this one, would you rather, if we want to look at an individual thing in here and discuss it, are you okay with having that discussion? Or would you rather us go through here and
No,
make
I'm
changes?
happy to talk about whatever you want right now. I feel like sometimes on both sides, we're worried about who writes it and who signs it. And that is, I wrote the scale, but I wrote the scale for you. So I would rather have discussion so we can talk through it and come to a cohesive item rather than just trade proposals. Like I'd rather make edits here that we talk about than me send it to you and you send it to me.
Okay,
I think we're at a point where we're far enough in the plan where we all understand the scope. We have some details that are kind of out in left field, but I think we can start discussing and making the edits together. And that way it can be a co-draft and we can hopefully TA.
okay.
think
I have
that's-
high aspirations.
That's our intent, because this is
And
a
that's
big,
what
a
we
big
want.
project.
It's huge.
And
it
and that,
does
that was our intent with the
work.
proposal we brought earlier today as well.
We
was for it
we
to
just
be a-
did it
a
in the wrong
discussion
way.
item.
It's okay, but we've both asked for more dialogue. We're having the dialogue. We're having good discussion. And at some point you can be like, I don't get that. And I'll pull it up and we'll look at it. But I'd rather draft it together than worry about who's going to write it. Because it's kind of our document at this point. I built it based off basically how Jordan and Chief O'Hearn educated me, and then I've evolved it through our discussions.
Okay.
And that's how I would like to keep going, but again, that's my preference.
Okay.
On this,
Just quick summary, it's
Cost
not
difference.
it's just an educational thing.
okay, this one here.
Yeah,
So it's based on just step 12.
yes, it's maxes.
Okay. And so that's the cost difference for each individual at step 12.
Yeah, so
Between
you
the
would have to
two.
multiply, it. That would be each individual times the number if they were maxed.
Okay. And I know there wasn't a lot of time, but do you know how this would look after 4 years of a contract starting from where we are right now?
No.
Okay.
Because, and I can build it for us, once we kind of come to a closer agreement on the table itself. Like, I'm happy to sit down and I'll show you how I build it, and I'll adjust things as we sit here. But I have to have a starting point that's solid, and right now it's mushy. So if we can get close on the table, I can get you a close estimate, but again, that compounding percentage all the way through just destroyed our costs. I can't get there. Council would laugh me out of the room if I proposed that, and then Gene would throw something at me.
I do have a clarifying question on one of these.
Okay.
So this top graph is your revised,
That's the
correct?
revised.
So I'm just looking at firefighter with paramedic on step 12. And I'm seeing 82,590. And then I'm looking at your
So
the summary.
I couldn't use my original spreadsheet because there's like 47 sheets that populate off of it, so I could
Okay.
cost it. If there's a small tweak there, it'll go, again, you're looking at the little one, the little sheet of paper.
Yes, little sheet of
Yeah,
paper.
big sheet of paper is an example, but it isn't with a controlling document.
Okay, because I'm seeing the max for firefighter with paramedic as 86,350, which would be a 3.5 increase of earning potential, but on this it would be a decrease.
So use the little for the controlling. The big is just an illustrative of the difference between the scales. There's gonna be a few errors in there because I didn't have a lot of time to get it, but I wanted to have the dialogue of why I can't afford it.
Okay.
So, example, controlling. Little one's controlling because it doesn't show the annual, because we can't put the annual in there because the system's gonna calculate different than Excel. We've run into that problem repeatedly. And then I have someone in my office grieving 12 cents for the year. I don't wanna do that.
So little graph is the correct number.
Little graph is the correct number.
Okay.
Big graph is thrown together so we can have a quick discussion.
Okay. Do you foresee any wiggle room in those numbers to get that firefighter paramedic back to at least where they would have maxed out at the end?
No, not for the scale that we revoked.
Not necessarily that scale. I guess what I hope I'm trying to say, currently the earning potential for a firefighter with paramedic is less than what it is on our current contract.
Because of the 25 years with the paramedic and the longevity max.
Yeah. And so that, it just provides our membership an avenue, a different avenue of not going into a leadership position, which
Yep.
people nowadays don't want to do.
They don't.
It gives them an opportunity to
To have that growth.
Some
to
people
have
get
that
on the
growth.
ambulance and they love it.
They love it, I know.
They love it. And-
I know.
they
And I
wanna
love
be-
those employees because I have these built-in experts that can help train
Yeah,
people.
Right.
So we can get there. I can't get there in this contract. Does that make sense? Like, I'm building this scale not for this year or next year. I'm building this scale so in 4 years we come back and we tweak it. We make it a little bit better. It gets a little bit higher. But I
So-
have to have a starting point. I have to worry about 4 years, not just 18 months.
Let me ask you this. You talk about tweaking it when we come back. So if somebody's put into the scale relatively high as a firefighter paramedic, and they move even closer to the end of the scale, when we come back and tweak it, are we able to tweak it to move them to a different spot?
So what we normally do when we do, I'm gonna call it a whole scale adjustment, not a table adjustment. I'm gonna take what we've built and I'm gonna adjust those percentages,
This step.
the
percentages.
steps.
Okay.
So you'll, in this one. So that 0.25 we have on that step in 27, that will compound across those steps because they're all gonna go up that much. So if you were to 7, you're suddenly making, 0.5% more without a table adjustment. So those small tweaks is what gets us to the max that you see now. We have one person. And I know we have to address the one person, which is why we have this big subsection in yellow for them. I can't build a scale that meets every individual need. What I can build is a scale that has the department need. So I can address the overall, but I can't talk about individuals, if that makes sense. I can't build it to make it work for one person. I'm trying to make it work for however many of their firefighters there are, because my math is now very tired. I have to build it for the whole, not for the individual. And part of that is there's pros and cons, but there's no way. I took 25 years of max and I compressed it into 12. So there is a value on that because, again, you guys are lucky with the longevity you have in employees. You have people that spend whole careers here. It is so rare. It's so kind of cool to see. But again, I'm going to run into those problems getting people onto the scale. But they're also going to make that max 13 years sooner than they would. So there is a benefit there. That by the end of those 12 years, the table will not look the same as when we created it.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a hard discussion, and I know it's personal to the people that we're talking about, but I can't talk about them personally because I can never build a scale.
Can I ask just a clarifying question?
I'll do my best.
Well, no, I'm not understanding it perfectly. So it's about the guy that's maxed out.
Our one guy.
Says that he has held that position and will be offered the next slot at the next vacancy in this rank.
Yep.
However, the city's preference is to do a permanent placement into the paramedic lieutenant position.
That's what we would prefer to do.
So,
Then they would be a lieutenant,
yes,
a paramedic lieutenant, and then I believe,
Have a couple more steps.
if he so chose though, could he then take the
Then it-
driver or
then it-
the engineer rank? that
then
he-
it would be a demotion.
Okay, and he would have to go down to step 3.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes,
that.
and it's hard because I'm trying to address that situation. And it's just, I don't even know how to write it because I need to have the discussion with you. So I have to write something. As if that wasn't enough. Do you have any other questions?
I don't. Do you guys? Marcus is thinking.
Yeah, that's fine. We can think in the back room.
Come on, Marcus, I want all the answers, right, questions right now.
Okay. So we got this out of the way. Did you say you had other
I have one.
things? One other thing? Okay.
Do you have anything else?
We do not.
Because I'm guessing we're wrapping up pretty close here.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably.
This one. All right, so this is city counter 5, which is a counter to your union 9, which is medical. To break that down quickly. All right, so I'm gonna walk you through what I did here. So I'll wait till you all have it so you can make notes and draw happy faces at me. You guys want 8%, I want 6.24. That's what I have authorization and we've talked about. I'm willing to split the difference at 7.12, but that's going to be as it applies now, not to the premium, but to what the city paid. So that is one thing that I do not have flex room on. Does that make sense? Right now, yours is written so that it's 8% over the previous year's rates. Mine is written so it's 7.12 over the previous city portion of rates.
Okay.
Okay, so if it goes up by 15, I cover 7.12 of that, but next year it would be off of my portion, not the whole premium. Okay? Then I have my little line there at the bottom that says all payments must be in compliance with Idaho code. Then I pulled the city HRA one and I included it, just verbatim. So then we're getting into the post-employment health plan, and I want to walk you through this because it's a tough one for me. So we put in mandatory employee contributions. I read the new plan documents, and it says that can happen, but they have to be mandatory for everybody. You guys want a copy of that? The plan document?
Familiar with
I
it.
think we're pretty familiar
Okay.
with that.
I'll submit one to Marisa for the record then. So I know that it has to be something that is basically negotiated under a union and it has to be mandatory. We can have caveats based around, I believe, hire dates, but we can't do it off of wages. And that's IRS guidelines, I believe. So that's what section B is on page 2. And then if you skip over to page 3, I added a section C, well, adjusted section C. This goes from Article 16. I see under the plan document, you can also roll your vacation payouts into your MERP rather than as a cash payout. I know that you guys are looking to increase this benefit. The city does not have the dollars to absorb this increase that you're talking about, but we could shift how this payment is done. This is not a do or die for us. I just wanted to put it in writing so you can tell me if that's something that's attractive to your union. And then I have the 2 bullet points about what the city will withdraw and what the union will withdraw to get this done. And then as you go to the back, on page 4, there's a little calculation after reading the document of what the MERP benefit is versus what we pay. Just so you can see, I did acknowledge, this is what we're contributing, this is what you get. And if we were to increase that with the $75 for the employee or the vacation payout, those numbers would increase.
So you said accrued vacation time payout is not do or die, is mandatory employee contributions do or die?
No, those are your preference.
Options.
I do not have the tax dollars to push towards increasing this benefit. All I'm doing is reallocating this vacation payout. That's a complete reallocation of a benefit you already have. That is not new money on the table.
And so that one, the vacation time payout would be
A reallocation of a current benefit.
yeah. So there would not be the option to get paid out for it.
There would be no option. It would be mandatory.
Okay,
IRS is a stickler on that.
okay.
And the employee contributions, that wasn't something I was aware we can do before, but I saw it in the 2023 update, so I wanted to make sure that you would know the city would be billing to manage that contribution, but I don't know if that's something you're interested in. Any questions off the top of your head?
Nothing for me yet.
So for this week, we are scheduled tomorrow in here at 10? 10,
At 10,
because I have morning meetings.
okay. So our numbers are gonna be dwindling even more so tomorrow due to some unforeseen things that have come up. Would it make more sense to cancel tomorrow and move to Friday?
I have to be honest, I am running out of time in the city budget. I need us to meet and keep moving if you guys are able to.
About
If-
Wednesday?
That's what I have
Yeah,
available
we
for
can.
council chambers and
Yeah.
meeting space. June is awful for the city side.
Yeah. So we can meet tomorrow and talk about stuff. It's gonna be hard for us to caucus, but we can meet tomorrow.
I am rapidly running out of time for us to get this done.
Sure.
I am also very, very, very close to the end. I'm basically at the end of what I can afford. I am at the end of what I can afford to offer, and I am past that line,
Okay.
just so you know.
Well,
I've stretched every penny I can.
we'll meet tomorrow, and do what we can with what we have.
So keep working on the job descriptions, though. I think we're
Okay.
very close. I'm happy with the progress there.
Okay.
I think we're pretty close on the scale itself, like the concept of the scale. We're still ironing out some of those details, but I think we're getting closer.
Okay. All right.
And we're done at 3:58.
Just a computer